They gave her the air mattress with the dog bed beside it while they toured her home to investors. Mabel Dunn, widow, homeowner, and mother, said nothing. Not when Trisha called her a sweet old soul. Not when Rick said, she'll forget all this anyway. By morning, the deed was in a trust, the sale was off, and their names were erased. They made her sleep on the floor, so she made sure it was hers again. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Mabel Dunn stepped onto the slate-tiled porch of her son's suburban home, suitcase in hand, and a Tupperware of pecan bars balanced on top. The late summer sun had begun to fade, casting long shadows across the stone steps. Inside, someone laughed too loud. Rick. Of course, the door opened before she could knock. Trisha, ever rehearsed, smiled with just her mouth. Oh, Mabel, we were wondering when you'd get here. Come on in. Watch the tile. The grout's still drying from this morning. Mabel stepped inside. The foyer gleamed like a showroom. Not a coat on a hook. Not a picture out of place. It didn't feel lived in. It felt listed. Rick's voice called from the kitchen. Hey, Ma. Hope you didn't bring that dented luggage again. It'll scuff the floors. She said nothing, just closed the door behind her and adjusted her grip on the Tupperware. Trisha led her past the kitchen, where the counters still held takeout boxes and an open laptop displaying architectural renderings. We had to make some space for you, she said, voice bright. Guest room's been converted into my closet/content studio. So, for now, we've set you up in the den. Mabel's brows lifted. The den, you'll love it. It's cozy and temporary. Trisha turned the handle and opened the door to a dim room that smelled faintly of cedar chips and dog shampoo. A navy blue air mattress sat beside a faux fur dog bed, the latter occupied by a snoring golden retriever named Winston. A single lamp flickered against the wall. Mabel took it in without flinching. I put a throw blanket on top, Trisha added, smoothing the corner. And there's a sound machine, if Winston snores. We just didn't want to rearrange too much upstairs. Rick appeared in the doorway behind them, grinning wide, bourbon in hand. Besides, you used to sleep on hay bales growing up, right? This is practically 5-star. He laughed at his own joke. Trisha followed suit, a nervous trill. Mabel placed the pecan bars on the side table. Hay didn't talk back or fart in its sleep, she said, casting a glance at Winston. The laugh caught in Rick's throat. Upstairs, footsteps padded across hardwood. Lily appeared on the landing in an oversized hoodie and headphones hanging around her neck. Her eyes flicked from the air mattress to Mabel, then quickly away. I didn't know, she said quietly. Mabel smiled, small but real. Don't worry, floors are good for thinking. Lily hesitated, then nodded. I'll see you in the morning. The door closed behind her without another word. Mabel sat on the edge of the mattress. It gave a hollow groan under her weight. She reached for her tote and pulled out a paperback. Spine cracked, notes scrawled in the margins, and set it beside the lamp. Then, from the side pocket, she pulled out a slim leather-bound notebook. She clicked her pen open. Observation, day 1, temporary, is often permanent when spoken with a smile. My name isn't on any door. Rick drinks brown liquor during dinner. So does arrogance. Lily looked like she wanted to apologize for more than just the mattress. Outside, a car engine roared to life. Through the window, Mabel saw Rick back his SUV down the driveway. Speakerphone on, already mid-conversation. Trisha was in the kitchen again, pacing in front of Zillow listings. Winston shifted and sighed on his bed, unfazed by the human tension surrounding him. Mabel stretched her legs out, settled back onto the crackling plastic air mattress, and folded her hands across her stomach. She stared at the ceiling fan spinning gently above her. It wasn't the floor that offended her. It was what it revealed. And somewhere in the kitchen, taped beneath the countertop she'd once helped install with Henry, was a sticky note she'd placed earlier that morning. Not yours yet. The smell of maple syrup masked the tension. Mabel sat at the kitchen island, hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug labeled #1 Grandma, the irony not lost on her. Rick flipped bacon in a pan with the confidence of a man who hadn't cooked for anyone but himself in a decade. We've been thinking, he said, not turning. About your place. Trisha looked up from her laptop, where an open Zillow tab displayed half a dozen highlighted listings. It's just sitting there, Mabel. That's an asset, an untapped asset. Rick plated the bacon with a flourish. With the market the way it is, you'd be shocked what old properties are going for, especially in East Austin. I live in North Loop, Mabel said, sipping. Exactly, Rick replied, as if that proved the point. Hot zip code, great walkability. Developers would kill for that lot size. Trisha spun her laptop around. Look, this one was built in '78, just like yours. 3-bed, 2-bath, not even updated. Still closed at $745K. Mabel leaned forward slightly. She didn't react to the number, but her eyes scanned the listing fast. Agent name, office logo, sale history. She nodded. Vinyl siding, composite faux cedar, Trisha corrected. It's what people want now. Less charm, more resale. Rick leaned against the counter, chewing loudly. We'd obviously handle the process for you. Staging, listing, paperwork. You wouldn't need to lift a finger, except the one that signs, Trisha added with a smile too wide to be kind. Mabel reached into her tote and quietly pulled out her planner. While Rick poured orange juice and Trisha refreshed comps, Mabel flipped to the back page. Her pen made a single dot beside each address she saw. No reaction, no challenge, just record and file. At 10:14 a.m., the doorbell rang. I'll get it, she said. Already halfway there. Outside stood Pete Washington, holding a rubber-banded stack of envelopes. Morning, Miss Mabel, she smiled. You walked this over, trucks in the shop. Figured your boy's mailbox probably filters the wrong kind of important. She took the mail. Top envelope. Bank of Texas. Statement enclosed. Urgent response requested. Pete glanced past her shoulder. You surviving in there? Barely, she said. But Winston snores less than Rick. Pete chuckled. That dog's got more manners too. She lowered her voice. Thanks for this. Let me know when you need those trim pieces back. Pete nodded and walked off without another word. Back inside, Mabel slipped the envelope into her notebook before re-entering the kitchen. Rick was mid-sentence. Can use a HELOC to leverage the duplex build if we secure early investor interest. Trisha nodded like a bobblehead. We'd make sure your name stays on something. A wing or a plaque. Mabel sat down. You've thought it through. Rick poured more juice. It's just about maximizing liquidity. You can't sleep on equity. Mabel raised an eyebrow but said nothing. That afternoon, Lily wandered into the den and found Mabel sitting cross-legged on the air mattress, flipping through the planner. What's that? Lily asked, pointing to the envelope peeking out. Just bills, Mabel said quickly, sliding it back in. Lily hesitated. It said urgent. Do you need help with something? Mabel looked up. For a second, the mask slipped, not fear, not weakness, but the exhaustion of someone forced to make decisions in silence. Sometimes, she said softly, you protect people by staying quiet. Lily sank to the floor beside her. You don't have to protect me. Mabel didn't answer. But she added one more dot to the page, next to a new address Trisha had circled in red earlier that morning. She didn't say it aloud, but the words pressed in her chest like the ticking of a time bomb. I am not the asset. I am the owner. And tomorrow she'd begin reminding them, one record at a time. The document arrived in a plain white envelope, marked Priority Mail, time sensitive. It was sandwiched between a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon and a local pizza flyer, which might have fooled someone less attuned to subtle threats. But Mabel knew the weight of intent when it came folded on legal paper. She sat at the den's card table, fingers curled around the letter, rereading the top line for the third time. Petition for durable power of attorney. Rickard J. Dunn, proposed agent, not notarized. Not yet filed, but drafted. Signed. Dated. Without her, no discussion, no courtesy. Rick hadn't asked for authority, he'd assumed it. She dialed Evelyn's direct line. Pratt and Welker, Evelyn speaking. It started, Mabel said. There was a pause, then the familiar steel in Evelyn's voice. Has it been filed? Not yet. Draft only, but typed like a final. I'll flag the county and check the e-filing logs. If it moves, we'll intercept. But you know what this means. I do, Mabel said. He thinks I'm already gone. Later that day, Mabel asked Rick to drop her at the house. I need to pick up my cardigan, she'd said. The green one. Rick waved a hand. Just take the whole drawer. We're gutting that closet anyway. When he pulled away, she didn't go inside immediately. She stood on the walkway, letting the front gate creak behind her. The house looked smaller than she remembered. Or maybe the people trying to take it had just grown too large in her eyes. She stepped in. The smell hit her first, lavender and cardboard. Someone had opened storage boxes. The hall runner was missing. So were the copper measuring cups, the hand-painted teapot from her sister in Vermont, and the rocking chair from the sunroom. Gone. She walked slowly through each room, checking edges and corners like a detective. A part of her had hoped she was wrong, that it was just dust or poor memory. But the evidence was clear. Trisha had already started picking the bones clean. In the back bedroom, her old iMac was booted up, tabs open on an auction site. A listing for vintage signed quilt. Estate sales sat active, 4 bids deep. The quilt was Mabel's. Her mother's signature was stitched into the border. Her hands trembled, but she closed the screen gently. Anger could wait. First, she'd catalog the damage. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find Pete on the porch, with a file folder tucked under his arm. Got something you should see, he said. Inside the folder was a stamped contractor estimate with Rick's name on the request line. Full foundation removal and grading. Pete read aloud. Intended for duplex redevelopment. Says, quote, owner requesting early estimate to expedite teardown permits. Mabel's breath caught, but her voice stayed steady. He used the word owner. Pete nodded. Not future owner. Not agent. Just owner. She blinked once, twice, then closed the folder. Can you email me a scan? I'll do you one better, Pete said. I'll drop off a hard copy and a USB backup tomorrow. Maybe it's time we start stacking our own paperwork. That evening, back at Rick's, Mabel sat at the edge of the air mattress, file open in her lap, receipts and photos spreading like a map across the floor. She didn't hear Lily come in until she knelt beside her, knees brushing against Mabel's planner. You okay? Lily asked. Mabel tried to answer, but her mouth worked around silence. A single tear tracked down her cheek before she wiped it away with the back of her hand. Lily looked at the receipts, the yellowing pages, the black and white deed copy from 1981. Let me help, Lily said. We can digitize all of it. I'll label folders, make backups, even password protect them. Mabel looked at her granddaughter, eyes bright, jaw set, and nodded. Start with the deed, she whispered. And the quilt. They've stolen pieces. I'm taking the whole thing back. Lily opened the laptop, and Mabel picked up her pen. Mabel had always been an early riser. Even now, on someone else's floor, under a vent that hissed cold air all night, her body stirred before dawn. The house was still. A quiet hum from the fridge. Winston snored once, turned over, and resumed his dreams of bacon or tennis balls. Mabel slipped on her cardigan and padded softly to the hallway. The morning light hadn't broken through yet, but the kitchen glowed faintly from Trisha's laptop screen. She stopped when she heard her name. Once she's out, we gut the place. Rip up the flooring, modernize the trim, lose those creepy old sconces. Trisha's voice was sharp, clipped, the tone she usually saved for bad customer service calls. A beat, then Rick. We'll do a duplex. Upstairs, downstairs units. College kids, maybe a tech renter. It's wasted as is. I mean, she barely uses the yard. And if she pushes back, she won't. She's tired. We just need to be patient until it tips. Mabel backed away without a sound, heart steady but heavier. Her feet found the plush hallway runner, cheap and too white for comfort, and she returned to the den. She sat on the air mattress with surgical precision, eyes fixed on the shadows, bouncing off the ceiling. Then she reached into her tote, pulled out her phone, and opened the camera. She started with the wine rack, Trisha claimed was a wedding heirloom. Mabel's initials were etched under the wood lip. A gift from Henry, their first anniversary after retirement. Click. Next, the antique pie safe in the hallway, the one Trisha had called dated junk. Inside were her grandmother's hand-painted sugar jars. Click. In the pantry, she documented 3 tins of old recipes in Mabel's cursive. In the dining room, she photographed the light switch plates she'd hand-painted herself in '89. Click, click, click. On her way back to the den, she paused at the curio cabinet. The glass was already dusted, wiped clean like it was ready to be moved. She opened the door gently and placed a small yellow sticky note on the inside of the glass. Not yours yet. Later that day, Lily peeked into the den and found her grandmother seated cross-legged again, surrounded by items labeled with fresh post-its. "You documenting the furniture?" she asked gently. "Every memory they didn't make," Mabel replied. Lily hesitated, then walked in, pulling her phone from her hoodie pocket. "Can I show you something?" Mabel looked up. Lily sat beside her, thumbs tapping through settings. "There's a voice memo app. It auto-saves and backs up. You can just start recording, even if your screen's off. And I can show you how to send the files to Evelyn." She handed over the phone. Mabel studied it like it might bite, then nodded slowly. "Start with a test," Lily said. Mabel tapped record, waited, then spoke. "This is Mabel Dunn. I'm saying this out loud so no one else can claim it later. The china cabinet was a gift from Lillian Walker, my maid of honor. I never authorized its sale." She ended the recording. A small beep confirmed it was saved. "I'll organize the files later," Lily said. "We'll keep them in 2 drives, plus cloud." "You're very good at this," Mabel said. Lily's face pinked slightly. Someone should be. That evening, the house was louder than usual. Rick had invited friends over. 3 men in polos and loafers, who used phrases like cash on closing and off-market buy. They gathered around the kitchen island, glasses clinking, laughter too loud. Mabel stood in the hallway and watched through the archway. Rick poured from a bottle of Bordeaux he'd found in her cellar months ago. "We're just waiting for final paperwork. It's legacy land, inheritance pending. You know how these things go." The men nodded, impressed. Mabel stepped back before they noticed her. She walked into the den, set her phone beside her planner, and hit record. She stared at the ceiling again, then slowly laid back. Beneath her, the mattress hissed with every breath. Beside her, the sticky notes whispered. And in the silence, she added one more note to the armchair across from her. "This chair knew grief before you knew greed." Tomorrow they'd see the labels, and soon they'd understand the weight of what couldn't be sold. Mabel didn't say where she was going that morning. She just asked Trisha if she could borrow the car. "Take the Camry," Trisha said, waving a hand. "Try not to mess with the seat settings." Mabel nodded, keys in hand, voice level. "I'll return it in the condition I found it." She did not mention that condition would be improved. By 9 a.m., she was seated across from Evelyn Pratt at a polished walnut desk that smelled faintly of lemon oil and high-stakes decisions. Evelyn, never one for small talk, clicked her pen and slid a document across the blotter. "You're sure?" Evelyn asked, scanning Mabel's face. "I'm past sure," Mabel replied. "I'm soil deep certain." The documents were quiet armor, a restructured will, a locked-down trust, and the legal transfer of her house to a private LLC named for her grandmother's maiden initials. The property title was shielded, off Zillow, off radar, off the menu. Mabel signed the final line and handed the pen back like a baton. "Public record?" she asked. "Scrubbed," Evelyn confirmed. "The trust owns it now. Your name won't come up unless someone knows where to dig." Mabel smiled. "They don't even know where to plant." Back at Rick and Trisha's house, a phone buzzed on the granite kitchen counter. Rick answered on speaker. "Hey, this is Rick Dunn," a male voice replied, puzzled. "I ran the title check. Why is the owner listed as MGH Ventures? That's not you, right?" Rick blinked. "What? Sorry, man. We can't proceed with the offer until your name's verified on the deed." The call ended. Rick stood still, then reached for his iPad. 2 minutes later, Trisha shrieked from the hallway. The listing's gone. It says property unavailable. I had 8 saves on that post. Rick muttered something that didn't quite rhyme with mother. Down the block, Pete Washington's truck rolled into Mabel's driveway. He stepped out with a coiled spool of wiring and 2 cameras in a box labeled security. Night vision enabled. Figured you'd want eyes on both sides of the house, he said. Especially the parts they call potential build zones, Mabel added. Pete gave her a rare smile. You catch on fast, done. She helped him unbox the cameras. One went over the front awning, discreet but precise. The second faced the alley behind the detached garage, where Rick had once said they'd install a flex unit for short-term rental. Not anymore. That evening, Mabel returned to her borrowed corner of Rick's den. Lily was already there, sitting cross-legged on the air mattress, flipping through yellowed family albums. These go all the way back to the farmhouse, she said, holding up a black and white photo of Henry holding a hammer, 2x4s framing the first walls of what would become their life. I'm scanning them all. Evelyn said they could be added to the legacy file. Watermarked, time-stamped, backed up. That way, if anyone ever questions anything, they'll have more than my word. Mabel finished. Lily reached into her backpack and pulled out a small flatbed scanner. I made a spreadsheet for captions and dates. Want to help? Mabel sat beside her. Let's do the years in reverse. That way we end up where it started. They scanned in silence at first, frame by frame, name by name. The living room blurred into dusk around them. Then Mabel paused at one photo. Trisha was in the background, years younger, posing near the same curio cabinet she now called junk. Mabel handed the photo to Lily. Add a note. Photographic record of disputed item. Present and in use. Circa 2008. Lily typed, then smiled. You're scary good at this. I learned from watching Who Wasn't. Upstairs, a door slammed. Rick's footsteps thudded across the hardwood. A frustrated bark of, the hell is MGH Ventures? Mabel didn't flinch. She simply reached over, pulled a fresh sticky note from her planner, and wrote in neat, steady ink. Already transferred. Already protected. Already done. She pressed it onto the photo album cover. And for the first time in weeks, she leaned back and let herself sleep. Rick didn't knock. The den door burst open so hard that the framed photo of Henry tilted on the bookshelf. Mabel looked up from her notes, her reading glasses slipping to the bridge of her nose. Her pen didn't pause. What the hell is MGH Ventures, Mom? Mabel clicked her pen closed, folded her planner shut, and calmly reached for the electric kettle on the side table. Would you like some tea? Rick stepped fully into the room, fists clenched at his sides, face flushed with disbelief. You think this is funny? You hijacked the title of the house. Our house. You humiliated me in front of a potential buyer. She poured hot water over the chamomile bag. It's never been your house, Richard. You just got used to talking like it was. He took a step forward, but stopped short when Winston let out a low growl from his dog bed. Do you even realize what you've done? Mabel stirred her tea, the spoon tapping the edge of the mug with a soft, even rhythm. Yes. Rick pointed at the scanner beside her. And all this crap, photos, files, receipts, what is this, a war chest? She didn't answer. He let out a bitter laugh and paced. I'm not your enemy, you know. I'm trying to keep things efficient. This isn't about you. It's about managing the future. Mabel finally looked at him, then stopped trying to erase the past. He stared at her, unblinking. You're going to regret this. She took a sip of tea. Then I'll have time. And peace. And a deed to think about it. He slammed the door on the way out. That night, Trisha tiptoed into the den with a glass of wine and a brittle smile. Rick's just overwhelmed, she said, carefully lowering herself into the accent chair like it might collapse. He doesn't mean to sound harsh. He just wants clarity. Mabel glanced at her. Is that what he wants? Or does he just want control? Trisha hesitated. You have to understand, he grew up with so little security. I think the idea of losing anything feels personal. Mabel studied her for a long moment. Tell him we'll meet. but not here. Where then? At Evelyn's office, she said, setting her tea down. With witnesses. Trisha blinked, then forced another smile. I'll let him know. The next morning, Mabel met Pete outside her house. He was up on a ladder, adjusting the new motion lights over the driveway. A second fixture waited in the grass, ready for installation over the back fence. Got the settings dialed in, he said. These will pick up anything bigger than a raccoon. Perfect, Mabel said, handing him a thermos of coffee. Rick's never been subtle. He won't start now. Pete screwed in the final bracket, then looked down. You ready for their tantrums to go public? Mabel smirked. They started this in private. I'll finish it in daylight. That evening, Lily came home early from a study group. She set her backpack down quietly and made her way toward the kitchen. As she passed the half-closed door to Rick's office, she paused. Inside, Rick's voice crackled over speakerphone. She's a liability, man. Emotionally, financially. She's sitting on a gold mine and using it like a time capsule. Lily's hand tightened on the stair rail. Honestly, Rick continued, I wish she'd just get confused long enough to sign the papers. Hell, I'd frame it as a favor. Another voice laughed. Someone Lily didn't recognize. She stepped away silently, heart pounding. Upstairs, she found Mabel arranging documents on her bed, adding page numbers in neat pencil marks. Grandma, Lily said softly. I think I need to testify. Mabel looked up. Not yet. Why not? Because right now I'm building the stage. She handed Lily a folder. Inside were labeled dividers, deed copies, tax records, historical appraisals. We'll let the facts speak first, Mabel said. But when it's your turn, make sure they hear you. Lily nodded, fierce and silent, and on the final divider, Mabel wrote in ink. For the ones who underestimated silence. Tomorrow, they'd meet in an office lined with law books, and for the first time, Rick would learn what it meant to lose on paper. The sign went up Saturday morning like it had every right to be there. White corrugated plastic, glossy lettering, bold serif font, open house, Saturday 11/2. Trisha had even splurged for a balloon bouquet in metallic gold and navy, anchored to the front gate like it was her birthday. Mabel noticed it from Pete's truck window as they drove past on the way back from the nursery. She didn't flinch. She didn't curse. She simply said, "Stop here." Pete raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Mabel nodded. "I have a tray of lemons and nowhere to be." By 11:20 a.m., Trisha stood in the front yard, clipboards in hand, smiling like a politician's wife. Her voice hit that brittle, elevated pitch, reserved for realtors and brunch influencers. Totally gutted potential. ADU-ready lot. Original hardwood under carpet. Hidden equity. The guests were a well-curated mix of developers, flippers, and one plastic surgeon in boat shoes. The latter carried a cappuccino in one hand and gestured toward the magnolia in the back lot with the other. Mabel arrived through the side gate. She wore her garden apron, sun-faded denim with pockets full of seed packets, and a wide straw hat that made her look like she'd stepped out of a Southern Living magazine. Dirt smudged the hem of her linen sleeves. She carried a silver tray with sweating glasses of fresh lemonade. Trisha blinked like she'd seen a ghost. Mabel walked up to the crowd with the steady grace of someone completely unimpressed. "Hot day," she said. "Lemonade?" There was a pause, and then one woman, in oversized sunglasses and a Hermes scarf, took a glass. "Is this fresh squeezed?" Mabel smiled. "Picked this morning from the tree." Trisha was going to gut. The scarf lady blinked, confused. "Wait, you live here?" Mabel nodded and gestured toward the house. "My name's still on the inside of the pantry door. Carved it with my husband in '84. Rick appeared on the porch, jaw clenched. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I live here," she said simply, holding out another glass. "Would you like one?" Before he could respond, a black Audi pulled up to the curb. Evelyn stepped out, heels sharp, expression sharper. In one hand, she carried a leather briefcase. In the other, a manila envelope stamped CS and desist. Afternoon, she said, loud enough to carry. Trisha froze. Evelyn marched up the walkway and handed a copy of the notice to Rick. You've organized a real estate event without the legal authority to do so. This is trespass and misrepresentation. Rick's mouth opened, then closed. Evelyn turned to the guests, addressing them like a courtroom. This property is currently held in trust. Not for sale, not for viewing, not for marketing. A murmur rose. Boat Shoes looked irritated. Wait, you don't actually own this? Pete, standing near the curb with his phone held at chest height, clicked a photo, then another. One of the sign, one of the balloon arch. The house was quiet, except for the rhythmic thunk of the grandfather clock downstairs, and the faint hum of Trisha's white noise machine, one of those devices that promised rest but only masked unrest. She padded barefoot across the den, retrieved the key from its hiding spot beneath the loose floorboard, and slipped outside. The fireproof box was still in the crawl space beneath the old shed on her property. It had lived there for 37 years, tucked behind insulation panels, wrapped in a layer of black trash bags and Texas dust. She pulled it free like an archaeologist reclaiming a relic. Back inside, she unlatched it with slow precision. Inside, home purchase receipts from 1981, appliance serial numbers, appraisals, original blueprints Henry had drawn by hand. All labeled, all dated, all indisputable. By sunrise, she and Lily were seated cross-legged on the floor, laptops open, scanners humming softly. We'll use 2 drives, Lily said, tapping in password credentials. One encrypted backup in the cloud, one physical. Evelyn wants everything categorized by decade. Mabel handed her a folded tax ledger from '92. Color code the audit years. The house was reassessed after Henry died. Lily glanced up. Because the city thought it lost value? Because grief doesn't fit inside a spreadsheet, Mabel said. But they tried. They scanned for hours, page by page, decade by decade. By late afternoon, Evelyn arrived. Her blazer was off, her sleeves rolled, and she moved like a woman who had filed more injunctions than birthdays. She reviewed the scans and began drafting a legal affidavit. 3 pages in, she paused. You documented everything. I lived it, Mabel said. That's not the same. Mabel raised an eyebrow. That's why it holds. Meanwhile, Pete had parked his truck across the street. He was there to double-check the new motion lights, but he waved Mabel over when she stepped outside. You'll want to see this, he said, holding up his phone. A marketplace listing filled the screen, vintage estate decor from Austin Historic Home. It was Trisha's account, 47 items. Recognizable ones. Mabel leaned closer. The listing photos were taken in her dining room, her quilt rack visible in the background. One item, her mother's depression glass set, had already sold. Pete scrolled. She's got a 5-star seller rating. Calls herself a curator of Americana. Mabel didn't blink. Send the link to Evelyn, and print it. By dinner time, Rick was red-faced in the doorway of the den, waving his phone like a badge. Explain this, he barked. Cease and desist letters to buyers, accusing Trisha of theft? Evelyn sent a notarized affidavit to my office. Do you know how that looks? Mabel didn't look up from her labeling. Like the truth. Finally having paperwork. Rick scoffed. You think this makes you look smart? It makes you look unstable. All this hoarding, these old receipts, napkins, handwritten notes. This isn't legal strategy, Mom. It's obsession. Lily looked up. It's documentation. Rick turned to her. Stay out of this. I'm already in it, she said calmly. You put me here the moment you called Grandma a liability. He opened his mouth to reply, but Evelyn's voice beat him to it, on speakerphone, from Mabel's laptop. You're welcome to challenge the documents in court, Evelyn said crisply. But I'll warn you now, discovery will not be kind. Rick turned pale. You had me on speaker. Affirmative, Evelyn replied. And you just threatened your client's mental fitness while dismissing her legal ownership. That's 2 strikes in one breath. Rick cursed under his breath and stormed out, the sound of his dress shoes slapping the tile like punctuation marks. Mabel quietly closed the box, now scanned and labeled in triplicate. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a sticky note. She wrote one line and stuck it to the outside of the fireproof lid. If they question your memory, show them the map. Lily looked at her. What now? Mabel folded her hands. Now we protect the house the way they never protected the woman in it. And just before midnight, Trish's listing page went dark, flagged for unauthorized property sales. The walls weren't just standing. They were documenting. The room was neutral by design. No clocks, no sharp edges, no clutter to provoke or distract. Just soft grays, a padded chair, and the faint scent of lemon disinfectant. Mabel sat with her back straight and her planner in her lap. Across from her, the evaluator tapped a pen against a yellow legal pad. You understand why you're here today? The woman asked. Voice calm but clinical. Because men with no memory want to question mine, Mabel replied. A pause. The pen stopped tapping. The evaluation began. Name? Mabel Elaine Dunn. Date of birth? March 3rd, 1949. It was a cold Thursday. My mother burned the cornbread. The woman blinked, surprised. Okay, they moved on. Serial recall, language fluency, spatial puzzles. Mabel breezed through them with dry wit and laser precision. When asked to subtract serial sevens from 100, she answered with a speed that made the evaluator pause. When asked to interpret proverbs, she rewrote one, don't count your chickens, or your mother's house, before you hatch a scheme. The final task was to recall a series of 10 words after a 3-minute interval. Mabel recited them in order, then alphabetized them, then listed their Scrabble point values. The evaluator sat back and said, You've got sharper recall than I do. Mabel smiled. That's because I didn't spend a lifetime outsourcing my brain to a husband. 2 weeks later, in a beige courtroom in Travis County, Rick stood in a navy suit that fit tighter than his last promotion. She's being manipulated, he said, gesturing toward Evelyn. This isn't about mental competence, it's about isolation. She's letting an attorney and a teenager rewrite her entire estate plan behind closed doors. Evelyn rose, adjusting the lapels of her blazer like a boxer cracking her neck before the next round. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A, a documented log of Mrs. Dunn's daily activities for the past 8 months. Grocery receipts, budget breakdowns, medication logs, none missed. Legal filings initiated by her, scanned, time-stamped, and double-backed by a minor. Yes, but one who scored higher on the PSAT than her father ever did on a mortgage form. There was a small chuckle from the back row. The judge didn't stop it. Exhibit B. Evelyn continued. Audio files of conversations Mrs. Dunn recorded herself. No confusion, no cursion, just clarity, strategic, deliberate clarity. Rick stepped forward again, trying to pivot. She's not the woman she used to be. Pete Washington stood up from the bench without being called. Neither are you, son. All eyes turned. The judge nodded. Mr. Washington, you've been named as a character witness? Yes, ma'am. He walked slowly to the stand, boots echoing against the linoleum. Mabel Dunn is the most prepared woman I've ever met. She keeps 3 copies of every receipt, labels her extension cords by voltage, and installed security lights herself at 74 without tripping a breaker. She is not confused. She is careful. And how do you know this isn't being rehearsed for her benefit? Pete smiled. Because I've known her since '81. You can't fake consistent over 4 decades. There was silence. Then Lily stood, without being prompted. I'd like to say something. The judge looked over her glasses. You're not on the witness list. She's my grandmother. I've lived in her house, slept on her floor, watched my parents make plans around her, not with her. If I stay silent now, I'm just another piece of furniture they think they own. A beat. Proceed, the judge said. Lily stepped to the front, hands steady. She remembers everything, every date, every letter, every story. They just don't like that she remembers it on paper now. She pulled out a manila folder and handed it to the clerk. Inside were annotated scans, Rick's emails, Trisha's sale listings, and the first sticky note Mabel had written. Not yours yet. The judge flipped through it silently. Rick shifted, jaw clenched. Evelyn simply crossed her arms. The judge looked up. Unless there's further objection. Rick opened his mouth. I rule that Mrs. Mabel Dunn maintains full legal competency. Motion to declare guardianship. Denied. The gavel struck wood. Evelyn turned to Mabel and whispered. They brought a hammer. You brought a library. But Mabel was already writing on another note. Next legacy, not leverage. And this time she handed it to Lily, who stuck it to Rick's briefcase on her way out the door. The letter was folded behind a faded warranty booklet for the furnace, tucked in a creased envelope with no stamp, no postmark, just her name on the front in Henry's left-leaning cursive. Mabel. She found it accidentally while reorganizing the fireproof box. The paper had yellowed, but the ink was intact, steady, unhurried. She read the first line twice before sitting down. If you're reading this, you're alone, and I hate that. But I trust you to be louder than grief and sharper than sentiment. Her breath caught. She folded one leg beneath her and read the rest in silence, mouthing certain phrases like prayers. Don't let them sell your worth to someone who doesn't know what it cost. This house has bones. Yes, but they're yours. Built from afternoons and arguments and the smell of apples in October. Let no one auction your spine. It wasn't poetry. It was better. It was permission. She found Lily in the kitchen, scanning the last of the recipe cards. Pause that a minute, Mabel said, pressing the letter gently into her hand. This one's more important than the peach cobbler. Lily read it aloud, voice steady until the last line. If the day comes when they call you too much, remind them who made them enough. Lily didn't speak at first, just blinked, eyes wet. He really wrote this? Mabel nodded. Never mailed it. I think he knew I'd find it when I needed to. That same afternoon, Trisha's social media lit up like a Roman candle. A photo of her sitting in their foyer, eyes red, captioned, trying to do right by family, but some people hold on to power like it's love. Manipulation isn't care. Controlling isn't wisdom. Pray for us. It spread faster than mold on old bread, but Mabel didn't reply. She didn't comment. The neighbors did. Wait, is this about Mabel Dunn? The woman who made freezer meals for every new parent on our street for 20 years. She gave me a place to crash when I lost my job. Still have her cornbread recipe. Didn't she tutor your kid through geometry, Trish? Within hours, the post was edited, then locked, then gone. But screenshots had already made their way to Evelyn. That evening, Evelyn sat across from Mabel in the garden, the sky soft with late dusk. I have a friend at the Statesman, she said. Feature desk, quiet profile. Your voice, your terms, no quotes out of context. Mabel snipped a dead bloom from the basil plant. Would it help other women like me? It already is, Evelyn said. But it would help more if you're ready. Mabel didn't answer right away. Just nodded once, sharp as a signature. Pete arrived just after 8, with a rolled blueprint under one arm and a pint of blackberry ice cream in the other. You'll want to see what your son was designing behind your back, he said, setting the roll on the table. Mabel unrolled it. The lines were sharp. The rooms were labeled in Rick's aggressive block print. In the top corner, the project name was typed in bold. Proposed demo, Dunn Residence. Phase 1. No mention of her. Just demo. She stared for a long time. Phase 1, she muttered. As if erasing me were just the first step. Pete handed her a pen. You want to mark it up? No, she said, folding it back into a perfect square. I want to file it. Under what? Proof of intent, she said. Let him draw blueprints. I'm writing legacy. She reached into her planner, pulled out a sticky note, and wrote not my end, just your draft. She stuck it to the blueprint's edge and handed it back to Pete. Make sure Evelyn adds that to Discovery, she said. As Pete turned to go, Lily stepped into the doorway, holding a flash drive. Backup's complete, she said, and labeled. Mabel smiled. Tomorrow the world might read her story in print, but tonight her house, her worth was intact. And for the first time in weeks, the air mattress didn't creak under her. It rose. The courthouse conference room smelled like oiled wood and old ink, a place where permanence lived in the fibers of the furniture. Mabel sat at the head of the long table, sleeves rolled, reading glasses perched low. To her right, Evelyn laid out the documents like a surgeon preparing for a procedure. On her left, Lily clutched a ballpoint pen in fingers that trembled only slightly. The air felt ceremonial. This document finalizes transfer of the property to the Dunn Legacy Trust, Evelyn said, voice calm but declarative. The named steward is Lily Elaine Dunn. Effective immediately. Mabel lifted her chin. Add the clause. Evelyn nodded, already flipping pages. Per Mabel's instructions, this home cannot be sold, mortgaged, subdivided, or otherwise leveraged for profit by Richard Dunn or Patricia Dunn, or by proxy of any party acting on their behalf. Pete leaned back in the corner chair and let out a low whistle. That's not just a lock. That's a vault. Mabel turned to Lily. You're not inheriting a house. You're inheriting a boundary. Treat it like one. Lily's voice was quiet but clear. I will. She picked up the pen. Her signature came last. Below Evelyn's, below Mabel's, just above the notary seal. The ink looked almost too soft for what it meant. When the final page slid toward her, Lily read it aloud. To the one who listened when I was on the floor, I leave the roof that held me upright. She blinked fast. You wrote that? Mabel reached for her mug of lukewarm tea. Felt like it needed saying. Outside, the Texas sun baked the courthouse steps. Pete cracked open 2 bottles of root beer and handed one to Lily, the other to Mabel. A toast, he said, lifting the bottle. To women who write their own clauses. Mabel tapped his bottle with hers. And to men who know when to stay out of the way. They laughed. Real, full, clean. The moment held until it didn't. The sharp click of heels on concrete shattered the stillness. Tricia descended the steps from the courthouse entrance like a woman late to her own scandal. Her hair was freshly styled, her makeup precise, but her expression was anything but controlled. 2 journalists lingered nearby, one from the local affiliate, the other with a press badge that read Observer. Both held cameras. You really went through with it, Tricia hissed, standing between Mabel and the press. You cut us out of your life. No, Mabel said, handing Pete her empty bottle. I took myself back out of yours. Tricia's smile flickered, then vanished. Do you know what this looks like? Yes, Mabel said, glancing pointedly at the cameras. It looks like accountability. Tricia took a step closer. You've made us look like monsters. I didn't make anything, Mabel said. I documented, you made the choices. One of the reporters stepped forward. Ma'am, do you mind if we ask what happened here today? Mabel straightened her spine. Her voice was calm, rooted, deliberate. Let the record show, she said, that I stood up from the floor. Then she stepped past Tricia without another word. The cameras followed. Lily hurried to catch up. They'll spin it, won't they? Let them try, Mabel said. The facts don't flinch. Pete fell into step beside them. Where to now? Mabel smiled. Home. As they reached the parking lot, Rick's black SUV pulled in. He didn't get out, just sat behind the tinted glass, watching. Mabel turned her head slightly, raised her hand, not to wave, to show him the keys. She held them in her palm like a verdict, then turned, unlocked Pete's truck, and climbed in. Back seat filled with blueprints and basil. Front seat filled with something Rick could never draft or fake. A future handed down, not taken. And from the dashboard, a sticky note fluttered slightly in the AC breeze. Title, transferred. Trust, earned, blood, not always binding. Tomorrow the headlines would run with sound bites. But Mabel's legacy wasn't in ink. It was in brick, in paper, in hands that remembered. And they were only halfway through. The invitation arrived by text casual, like it hadn't all unraveled. Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. Family only, Let's clear the air. Trisha Mabel read it, set the phone down, and didn't reply. Instead, she turned to Lily, who was watering the lavender starts on the front porch. You go, Mabel said. Lily looked up. You sure? Mabel nodded, handing her a brown paper-wrapped bundle. Drop this off at dessert. No speeches, no apologies. Just presents. Lily raised an eyebrow. And if they ask where you are, tell them I'm busy tending things that grow. At 5:57 p.m., Lily rang the doorbell. Trisha opened it in a flowy cream blouse and bare feet, holding a wooden spoon like it was part of the outfit. Come in, she chirped, too brightly. Rick sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, bourbon sweating beside him. The table was set for four. A roast, candles, staged piece. Lily placed the paper bundle on the tablecloth and unwrapped it slowly. 3 framed 8x10 photographs. The first, Mabel kneeling in a flower bed, sleeves rolled, dirt-streaked cheeks glowing in the sun. The second, Pete helping her lift a trellis, arms locked mid-lift, both laughing. The third, the new gate. Painted deep green, engraved at the top in brass. Still home, Rick stared. Trisha blinked. She asked me to bring reminders, Lily said softly. Not of what's been lost. Of what she's rebuilding. No one spoke. Trisha stood abruptly and moved toward the kitchen. Wine? She asked, not waiting for an answer. She reached for a new bottle, still in its gift box. She'd been saving it, something with a wax seal and a Napa Valley price tag. She opened the box. Inside, nestled beneath the straw packing, was an envelope. Trisha froze. The label read, Notice of Repossession of Shared Premises, Austin County Court. Rick stood, voice low. What is this? Lily didn't flinch. It's notice. Mabel no longer holds tenancy in that house. She owns it outright. You don't. You're on borrowed furniture and legal fumes. Trisha's hand trembled as she pulled the papers free. Rick read over her shoulder, then looked to Lily. You're enjoying this? No, Lily said. But I've stopped apologizing for not pretending. Back on Mabel's front lawn, Pete unloaded lumber and lattice work from his truck bed. His shirt was stained with sawdust and something that might have been paint. Got enough here for the pergola, he said, tipping his head toward the yard. Maybe even a raised bed or two if we stretch it. Mabel smiled. I want shade over the west side. Henry always said the sun hit meanest from that angle. Pete set the posts down gently. We'll build it to hold. Inside, Evelyn sat at the dining table with Lily's laptop open. The estate file sat beside her, updated and retabbed. Just finalize the clause. Evelyn said, the trust is now irrevocable. Not even a court appeal can pry it open. Mabel nodded. And if Lily chooses to pass it down, she can on her terms. No bloodline required, only merit. Mabel looked out the window at her granddaughter, now kneeling to separate rosemary stalks into labeled planters. She'll know what to do. Back at the family dinner table, Rick checked his phone for the 4th time in 10 minutes. The screen lit up with a single notification from his remaining investor, regretfully withdrawing. Ongoing optics and legal confusion suggest personal instability. No longer tenable. B. He closed the phone slowly. Trisha wiped at her eyes, half whispered. We still had options. Rick didn't answer. The roast cooled. The candles burned lower, and the room, once so meticulously set, began to feel staged for a party that would never arrive. At the same moment, miles away, Lily stepped into the freshly cleared kitchen of Mabel's house. She opened the fridge, removed a chilled bottle of root beer, popped the cap, then she walked onto the porch, where Mabel sat in the twilight. Lily handed her the drink. No speeches, she said. Mabel clinked the bottle with hers. Just presence. They sat like that while the stars blinked awake, and inside the new gate, beneath brass letters that held fast in the dark, the wind moved gently through growing things. The first stroke of paint landed on the den wall just after sunrise, soft sage, calm and clean, covering 30 years of fading beige and the dull thumbprints of a family's decline. Mabel didn't say anything as she dipped the roller again. She just handed Lily a tray and pointed to the opposite corner. They worked in silence, the kind shared by people reclaiming something that was never truly lost, just silenced for too long. "You picked the right color," Lily said, standing on the step stool. Mabel smiled without looking up. "It's the one Henry hated, which makes it perfect now." By mid-morning, the whole front room smelled of citrus cleaner and second chances. The windows were open, letting in the good kind of noise, birds, wind, and Pete's boots thumping across the back porch. "Found something," Pete called, knocking once before stepping in. He carried a small cedar box, no bigger than a tackle case. The hinges creaked like secrets being allowed back into daylight. "It was under the crawl space," he said, "behind the old water heater." Mabel knelt beside him and opened the lid slowly. Inside were bundles of ribbon-tied letters, a locket with a baby photo inside, and a key wrapped in faded oilcloth. Beneath that, a copy of Goodnight Moon, with Lily's name etched in pencil on the inside cover. Lily crouched beside her. "Is that your mother's?" Mabel said softly. She must have hidden it before the renovations started. She thumbed through the letters, some addressed to her, some unsigned. Grief sat beside her for a moment, then quietly excused itself. She closed the lid, put it on the mantel. "We keep what mattered, we file the rest." That afternoon, Mabel sat at the dining table. Scraps of fabric and old photos spread before her like a quilt waiting to be sewn. She opened a fresh scrapbook, black pages, crisp and untouched. On the first page, she glued a photo of the house from 1985. Henry on the ladder. Mabel in cut-off jeans holding a hammer. A caption in her handwriting read, "Not yours to inherit." She turned the next page and taped in Rick's demo phase blueprint, with the sticky note still attached. She grinned as she wrote beneath it, "Drafted for erasure. Filed for memory." Evelyn arrived just before sundown. She carried a folder and a pen that clicked like a pistol. "Final version of the land letter," she said. "You ready?" Mabel scanned the page. It was short, direct, unmistakable. A portion of the back acre once marked for duplex parking was being donated to the Travis County Garden Trust for use as a protected pollinator zone. "Public," Evelyn said. "Permanent. Not even Lily can revoke it." "I know," Mabel said. "But maybe she won't have to." She signed with a firm hand, the kind that didn't shake when the earth did. Meanwhile, back in the house that now echoed, Tricia stood at the sink of their borrowed rental and stared down at a ring she hadn't removed since 2006. She twisted it off slowly and dropped it into an empty ramekin. Rick sat in the next room, surrounded by unpaid invoices and a half-empty bottle of Cabernet. "I filed today," she said. He didn't respond. "I didn't marry you for a house," she added. "But I also didn't marry someone who'd try to erase his own mother like bad wallpaper." Still no reply. The mail lay unopened on the floor. One envelope was from the bank, another from the county tax office. A third was a forwarded copy of the Austin Statesman, folded to the lifestyle section, the roots that held one woman's legal garden. The photo showed Mabel, Lily, and Pete in front of the rebuilt trellis, basil overflowing behind them. Rick blinked. He looked like a man who'd opened a door expecting a vault and found a chapel instead. Back on the newly painted porch, Mabel placed a small hand-painted sign in the flower bed. "This house grew people." It still does. Lily sat beside her, thumbing through the scrapbook. "You ever think you'd get to do this?" "No," Mabel said. "But I always knew I'd survive long enough to try." From down the road came the echo of an unfamiliar engine, a car idling just long enough to wonder if it should keep driving. Mabel didn't turn to look. She just opened the next blank page and picked up her pen. The knock came just after dusk. 3 slow raps, the kind that knew they weren't welcome. Mabel looked up from the scrapbook, then over to Lily, who froze mid-glue stick swipe. Pete was still out back tightening the last set of hinges on the garden gate. She stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and opened the front door. Rick stood on the porch he didn't pay for. In the boots Mabel had once bought him in high school, when his were too tight and he wouldn't say so. He looked thinner, shirt wrinkled, collar soft from too many washes and too little direction. "Mom," he started, voice low. "Can I come in?" She didn't blink. "Say what you need to from there." Rick swallowed. I know things got ugly. I was under pressure. Investors. Trisha. Expectations. But this house is no longer part of your portfolio," she said evenly. "I'm not asking for the title," he said. "I'm asking for one more chance. To fix what I broke." Mabel stepped aside, but only to reveal a folded document on the entry table. "You'll find your answer there," she said. Rick frowned, stepped forward, and picked it up. The heading was clear. Restraining order. Protective filing. Done v. done. He froze. Mabel added, "You're not barred from memory, just proximity." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You really think I'm dangerous?" "I think you're not done taking," she replied. "And this house is." From the side of the yard, Evelyn's voice cut in, sharp as garden shears. "If you persist," she said, appearing from beneath the trellis, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, "I'll escalate this to harassment. We've already logged prior incidents. And before you say anything clever, this conversation is being recorded." Rick looked between them, jaw tight. "This is family," he muttered. "You're turning it into a courtroom." "No," Mabel said softly. "You turned it into a closing argument. I'm just submitting my evidence." He stepped back slowly, eyes flicking across the porch one last time, pausing on the sign planted near the basil. "This house grew people. It still does." By the time he turned and walked away, the streetlights had clicked on. Later that evening, Lily stepped outside with a square of cardstock in her hand. She wrote one line in thick marker and pinned it to the new gate Pete had finished that morning. "This home loves truth." Pete stood a few paces behind her, wiping his hands on a towel. "Well placed," she smiled. "And it deserved its own voice." Pete nodded and reached into the back of his truck. From beneath a blanket, he pulled out a small carved plaque. Dark wood, smooth edges, etched in cursive with gold leaf. He handed it to Mabel. "Owned. No frills. No disclaimers." She ran her fingers across the grooves like braille, her mouth a soft line of pride and something older peace. "Where should it go?" he asked. Mabel glanced toward the porch column nearest the front gate. "Eye level, so no one can say they didn't see it." He installed it with quiet precision while Lily snapped a photo for Evelyn's archive. The next morning, Mabel dressed in a clean button-up and soft cotton slacks. She carried 2 canvas totes into the downtown community center. Old photo albums, a few keepsake frames, one of Henry at the grill with a beer in hand, laughing. Inside, the director met her with a hug. "You're sure?" she asked, gently cradling the albums. "They belong to the neighborhood more than the attic," Mabel said. "Make a wall from it. Let the kids see who lived before them, who stayed." By the time she returned home, the sun had stretched low across the porch, warming the brass letters on the gate until they glinted like truth. She stepped inside. The scrapbook sat open on the table. One new page awaited. She picked up her pen and wrote, "The cost of forgetting is always higher than the effort to remember." From the corner of the room, the wind moved a curtain. Outside, someone drove slowly by, then kept going. The morning opened like a secret. Soft light pooled on the porch steps. Dew clung to the lavender, and the world exhaled gently around the Dunn house. Mabel moved through the garden in slow, confident steps. No cane, no rush. Just the quiet rhythm of a woman who finally owned every inch beneath her. Birdsong lifted in layers, cardinal, mourning dove, something unfamiliar in the rosemary. She paused at the trellis, brushing her fingers across the new vine climbing the lattice. "Too fast," she murmured. "Or just in time." From across the yard, Lily stepped out, barefoot in the grass, trust papers in hand. She was dressed in overalls streaked with soil and confidence. I retabbed the final file, she called, and highlighted the clause you told me to never forget. Mabel raised an eyebrow, then read it, just to hear it out loud. Lily unfolded the page and read clearly, her voice catching only once. Clause 9C. This trust shall remain intact and enforceable, not to be revoked, rewritten, or reinterpreted by any direct or indirect heir, regardless of blood, circumstance, or entitlement. Mabel smiled. Looks prettier on the page than in the court filing. It's bulletproof, Lily said. Good, Mabel replied. Then let the house breathe. Near the center of the yard, Pete dug into rich soil, sweat on his brow, boots planted wide. The tree he held, young but promising, rested beside him in its burlap wrap. This one's a slow grower, he said. Thick trunk, deep roots. Won't bloom much in the first 5 years. That's fine, Mabel said, wiping her hands on a rag. I'm not planting it for now, I'm planting it for after. He smiled, lowered the sapling into place, and patted the dirt down like sealing in a promise. Lily approached with a hand-carved marker. She placed it in the soil at the base. Legacy oak, planted July 16th. For what stays, the ceremony, if it could be called that, was held beneath the awning at noon. Folding chairs circled under string lights. Neighbors clustered with iced tea and quiet admiration. The city councilwoman presented the award with humility, handing Mabel a small bronze plaque and a folded certificate. For preservation, for dignity, for building a foundation no one could bulldoze. Mabel held it for a moment, then set it on the porch railing beside her root beer. I didn't do this to be remembered, she said. Voice calm, low, clear. I did it so the remembering could keep happening. Evelyn raised her glass. To the woman who built the foundation, she paused, smiled. And the ceiling. Everyone clinked. Pete just lifted his bottle with a nod. From the street, a dark sedan passed slowly. Trisha behind the wheel. Windows closed. No wave. No stop. She didn't park, didn't speak. Just kept driving, like someone circling a life that had moved on without her. Back inside, Mabel stepped through the house slowly. Her fingertips brushed each doorway, each arch, each memory that had once been threatened, but now stood unmarred. She entered the den, now painted soft sage, the bookshelf reloaded with albums and law books, and a single black scrapbook labeled, "Not yours to inherit." She closed it gently, setting it on the shelf beside a small wooden box, the one Pete had found under the heater weeks ago. She turned, walked to the window, and looked out at the legacy oak. Lily knelt beside it, tying a ribbon around the stake. Pete stood beside her, nodding with quiet pride. And Mabel, standing in the den where she once slept on an air mattress beside a dog bed, smiled, not with triumph, but with ownership. They had tried to put her on the floor, and she had turned that floor into something else entirely. She picked up a new sticky note and wrote the final line she'd ever need. They gave me the floor, and I turned it into ground they'll never own again.